if I can quote, the farming community is irrelevant to the ANC government, as alleged by the Honorable Kola Banat. At the risk of stating the obvious, this ANC government, elected by the people of South Africa, is concerned about every aspect of South African life. And this attempt by some in the opposition at driving a wedge between our government and the farming sector cannot be left unchallenged. It, in fact, is doomed to fail. The levels of moral degeneration and deviant behavior in our society are a cause for concern. As pioneers of this constitution, one of the first orders of business was to pass legislation on restitution of land rights, and soon thereafter we passed legislation to look at the farm workers and farm dwellers, precisely because we understood and acknowledged that this is a community that has been well deprived of everything historically. Some farm matters are attributed to conflict between the owner and the farm workers. That is why we then pioneered the establishment of the Extension of Security of Tenure Act, which currently we are busy shaping it up, tuning it up to fit the necessary conditions. As a department led by the Portfolio Committee, such amendments have been sponsored in order to create mechanisms which resolve conflict between the two parties. We are of the view that this amendment act passed by this House will have alleviated some of the potential conflicts. In some instances, where there are labor disputes, these are not resolved amicably. Instead, what you witness is the demolition of houses belonging to farm workers and farm dwellers, water and electricity being cut off, grazing rights for their livestock being curtailed, and ultimately illegal evictions take place even on this day and age. The issues that I'm raising, Honorable Chairperson, are by no way an excuse for anyone to kill anybody. Let it therefore be very clear that this government is not an uncaring government that does not care about the farm workers and farm owners. In 1998, the founding president of our country had this to say in a summit that he was addressing, and I quote him: "The solution to the problem of farm killings must come from all of us, not only from government. I am convinced that any political differences notwithstanding, this is one issue which we can speak with one voice," close quote. The ANC president in January 2019 spoke about the serious nation-building efforts because we as South Africans are but one people. Let me not be misunderstood. As I said before, I'm not raising these points in order to say there's any justification for certain killings of farm owners. All I am saying is the road to create a united South Africa goes through the road of creating an equal society. The fact that we are able to put on farm workers like sardines in a buggy that is meant to carry 7 people, and then we make a point that 30 people are pushed in that buggy so that they can be able to perform work and they die on our roads, means that we should really take care that these are human beings and we must make every effort. This is not a point that can be dealt only by government. As far back as 1997, the carrying ANC government developed this strategy out of concern about the safety and security of farming communities. What you can do is to update the strategy, led by the Minister of Police, as this ministry are an affected and interested stakeholder, because food production and food security is our core business. I have listened to Honorable Groenewald, and he pointedly indicated that even in the last debate on this particular issue, all political parties were united in condemning the killing on the farms, in making sure that no one is killed. All that we need to do is put all our hands on deck. Government needs you, you need government, we need South African society in order for us to resolve the problems of our country. If we do so, you definitely would not find this government wanting. I just want to remind that what we are dealing with is a mess, not of the creation of this particular government. We are dealing with a mess created by colonialism and apartheid. We are dealing with that mess. But look at how magnanimous we did. 1955, we gathered and consciously agreed that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, and that no government can claim authority over South Africa unless that government is based on the will of all the people of this country. Those that were in charge of this country did not listen to us there. They continued to kill us. We decided that maybe they will only understand when we do to them what they are doing to us. But as we took up arms in 1961, look at how wonderful the oath of Mkondo Wesizwe was. It said, we are taking up arms because we love peace. When an opportunity does arise in our
time is expired. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Honorable members, that concludes the debate. The Secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of report.
The Secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Technology, on Sector Education and Training Authorities and National Skills Fund 2020 to 2025 strategic plans and 2020-21 annual performance plans and budgets.
The Honorable Mapulane.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson, honorable members, and fellow South Africans. The committee convened a meeting on the 22nd of May 2020 with the ETDP SETA, the MIC SETA, the MERSETA, and the National Skills Fund to consider their 5-year strategic plans and the 2020-2021 annual performance plans. The 6th administration, under the leadership of President Ramaphosa, published the new 2019-2024 medium-term strategic framework, which is the second phase of the implementation.
Honorable Mapulane, please continue.
The 6th administration, under the leadership of President Ramaphosa, published the new 2019-2024 medium-term strategic framework, which is the second phase of the implementation of the National Development Plan. Government departments and entities are to align their 5-year plans with the policy priorities of the electoral mandate of the new administration. This financial year is the first year of the implementation of the new MTSF. Our committee oversees over 100 entities of the Department of Higher Education and Training, as well as 9 more entities of the Department of Science and Innovation. Notwithstanding the wider scope of its work to strengthen its oversight function over the 21 SETAs, we have been concerned about the deplorable reputational image of most of the SETAs, especially in relation to good governance, poor management of their finances, including the adverse audit outcome. However, there are a good number of SETAs which are doing a sterling work to facilitate the skills funds interventions, to grow a pool of critical and scarce skills to support economic growth. The new National Skills Development Plan recently published by the department seek to inform the work of the SETAs and the NSF until 2030, and therefore, consideration of the plans of the SETAs and the National Skills Fund has to ensure that they are aligned to the national policy priorities and their programs are adequately funded. The committee assessed the plans of these entities in relation to the extent to which they seek to implement the new National Skills Development Plan recently published and other policy priorities, whether they have developed the interventions to support the outcomes to expand access to post-school education and training opportunities, improve success and efficiency of the PSET sector, improve quality of the PSET system and a responsive PSET system. We would like to commend the National Skills Funds for its sterling work in supporting the PSET sector to expand access to education and training through the construction of new TVET college campuses. Work is underway towards completing some of these sites. However, delays are experienced due to the lockdown and there are cost overruns as a result of other factors. Honorable members, measures put in place by government to respond to the impact of the pandemic on the economy and health of the citizens have adversely impacted the income of the SETAs and the National Skills Fund. Approximately 8 million in revenue in the current financial year will be lost as a result of the 4 months break on skills levies contribution by companies. It is, however, comforting to know that funding for the new campuses is secured. Already some of the SETAs and the NSF have tabled their revised 2020-2021 APPs with a significant downwards adjustment on their budgets and targets. Some SETAs are struggling to fund their current operations due to cap on the administrative spending. We do urge the SETAs and the Minister, including the Auditor General, to engage in this matter to find an amicable solution to assist the SETAs so that spending on the administration does not result in audit findings at the end of the financial year. Whilst appreciating the role of SETAs playing in providing bursaries to students, the committee is concerned that there are multiple bursary systems administered by the 21 SETAs. Of great concern is the duplication of functions with administrative costs, while there are national systems such as the NSFAS and the NRF that administer and disburse bursaries to undergraduate and postgraduate students. And the committee was unanimous in its concern about the continuous conflict of interest with respect to the awarding of tenders by members of the SETA boards. For example, the former CEO of MICCT SETA was found to have awarded tenders to his close family members. There are also investigative reports from the SIU, the Public Protector, and the SETA's own internal investigations that their findings are yet to be implemented. It is concerning that SETAs are not moving with speed in implementing the recommendations of these investigative reports, and monies lost through irregular activities are not recouped. Consequence management should be implemented against those who are implicated in wrongdoing. The committee will strengthen its oversight over these institutions to ensure that they execute their tasks consistent with their mandates. We do recommend that the House adopt this report, Honorable House Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party from the Chamber. The Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, I hereby move that this report be adopted by the House. Thank you.
I've received requests for declarations of vote. I now recognize the Democratic Alliance. The Honorable Nododa is in the chamber.
I'm actually on the virtual platform, Chairperson.
Please continue, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Chair. Mhlala ngaphambili malunga abekekileyo fellow South Africans molweni. As recipients of billions in taxpayers' money annually, CETAs and the National Skills Fund have an important role to play in training and in the training and education of millions of South Africans. It is almost ironic then that the very people responsible for skilling and educating South Africans could not even be bothered to employ people with the required skills and qualifications to lead these CETAs. The South African Qualifications Authority has revealed in Parliament that certain executives of both the services and the wholesale and retail CETA do not have the necessary and required qualifications to occupy their respective positions. These revelations lay bare the root of the problems at CETAs, which have led to dubious transactions, maladministration, government, and governance instability. They fall short of being institutions that the South African people can be proud of. For a long time, the focus has been who gets what position at CETAs, rather than fulfilling the mandate of developing skills of the millions of South African youth who are not yet in education, employment, or training. The impact of COVID-19 company tax relief in the form of 4-month skills levy contribution holiday has added to injury of the crippled CETAs, which consequently created a shortfall of 6 billion of the revenue of the CETAs and the NSF, which will impact on the current and the medium-term plans, targets, and budgets of the entities, amongst others, developing scarce skills, recruiting talent, and payment of stipends. The duplication of functions, while there are national systems such as the NRF that can administer and disperse bursaries to undergrad and postgrad students, is of concern considering the appalling financial management by the CETAs. The DA is disgusted of the ongoing corruption and looting of funds, which has led to the MIC CETA, the MER CETA, the agricultural CETA, and the financial and accounting services CETA having been subject to investigations by the Special Investigation Unit and the Public Protector owing to irregularities by the former CEO and employees. Due to conflict of interest with respect to awarding of tenders from members of the CETA's boards, which is cited as a root cause of destabilization of the core functions in these entities. Tracking and tracing of skills development interventions of the beneficiaries is not done, therefore meaning that the department can't account of where the individual skills are located is of great concern, because we can't be skilling young people to join the unemployment ranks. The CETAs have lost public confidence with respect to their work, particularly the facilitation of skills development interventions to the unemployed and workers in industry. It's high time the minister reviews the entire business and financial model to empower businesses with skills and development rather than dismally failing entities such as CETAs. However, conflict of interest and greed in the awarding of tenders has the root causes for the destabilization of these entities. Poor internal control systems and breach of supply chain management processes remains an ongoing concern in some of the CETAs. Recurring irregular expenditure and annually is of serious concern, including the lack of consequence management against implicated in irregularities. Therefore, the DA has recommended that the investigations be concluded and institute consequence management on the CETAs that have been subject to the SIU and Public Protector investigations, and progress towards strengthening internal controls to prevent recurrence of improper conduct by board members and senior management. All the CETAs should develop a tracking and tracing system for skills development beneficiaries. To clear all certification backlog to zero before their next reporting period. There needs to be a review of all CETA boards and executives in terms of their qualifications to ensure the efficient running of these SETAs. The minister needs to review of how SETA funding is allocated to ensure that money goes to the private sector for skills development so that millions of youths who are not yet in education, employment, or training can be assisted. The DA supports this report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next declaration will be from the Honourable Tembakwayo from the EFF. The Honourable Tembakwayo.
Thank you, Chairperson. The sector education and training authorities were established to promote skills and development in this country. Properly managed, they could make a significant contribution to rooting out unemployment and creating a layer of skilled South Africans. They could be utilized as part of an overarching program of industrializing the country in order to create a sustainable base for economic growth and employment creation. However, this has not been the case. These SETAs who get their money from the levy employers pay to the taxmen are largely used as a vehicle by the leaders who project themselves as leaders in this country. The many cases of corruption in MESETA, at Service SETA, the allegations of corruption and awarding of tenders by the former CEO of MICT SETA to family members and delays in implementing consequence management against his improper conduct are all symptoms of a system that has been hijacked by political elite to fit their insatiable desire to loot. At the center of all these corrupt activities, of all this management and deliberate running down of these SETAs, at the center of the strategic dumping down of the role of these sectors, there's one political leader, a former communist who has now found appreciation for the finer things corruption can buy. We must ask ourselves what the role has Mr. Blade Nzimande played in the systematic looting of these training authorities and why he has not been brought to book yet. If there is any seriousness about fighting corruption in the public service, then Mr. Blade Nzimande must account for his role in the corruption that has been taking place in all these SETAs under his political control. We therefore reject this report. Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Ngobo from the IFP. The Honourable Ngobo.
Honourable Chairperson, sorry, he's having network problems, so it's the Chief Whip of the IFP. May I proceed? Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, honourable members, can a country hope for a bright future if the next generation is not given the opportunities and skills needed to face the fourth industrial revolution? I'm quite certain that you will stand in agreement with me when I unequivocally state that answer as no. I'm also quite certain that you will agree with me about the very high, particular and important responsibility of the Department of Higher Education, Science and Technology in equipping our young people for the future. Unfortunately, this essential sector could not evade the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to the lives lost among our educators and students, the economic impact will serve to devastate the lives of thousands more. According to the report, SETA budgets across the board have been dramatically impacted by the Skills Development Levy Contribution 4-month holiday to respond to the socioeconomic impact of COVID. Tragically, a measure adopted with the best intentions has birthed unintended consequences. For example, the Media, Information and Communication Technology SETA, the MICT SETA, now projects, and I quote, reduced targets of beneficiaries from 11,845 to 6,196 learners, close quote, for skills development initiatives. Honourable Chairperson, these might seem just to be numbers on a report, but they represent almost 6,000 young people whose hopes and dreams for a better future and who have been deprived of assistance through no fault of their own. The report also lists various incidences of corruption, which my other colleagues have referred to, and mismanagement of funds. This is totally unacceptable. Our young people cannot be forced to pay for, quote, the sins of the father, as it were. The report also makes mention of the fact that the committee could not meet with the Office of the Auditor General and that lockdown prevented the auditing teams being withdrawn from audits. This needs to be rectified now that level 2 restrictions are in place. Finally, Honourable Chairperson and members, the dramatic impact of the loss of income from levies has had on the budget of the SETAs should allow us to think out of the box and look for alternative sources of funding for this very noble training. Thank you very much. The IFA accepts the report.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. The next speaker is the Honorable Boshoff.
Honorable House Chair, the direct skills levy on the National Employment Account would have yielded more than 19 billion rand this year. Maar as gevolg van die COVID-19 ekonomiese ramp, gaan dit waarskynlik tot omtrent 11 miljard rand daal. En omdat dit aan die salarisrekening gekoppel is, styg, stagneer of daal dit saam met die ekonomie. Elke kind wat gebore word, verhoog die ekonomiese potensiaal van Suid-Afrika. As daardie kind die regte kennis, vaardighede en werksetiek aankweek, word die potensiaal werklikheid. Indien die persoon lewenslank van die een maatskaplike toelaag na die ander beweeg, gebeur dit nie. Die werklikheid is dat byna 1/2 van die land se bevolking van werkende ouderdom nie werk nie. Maar ondersoeke na ekonomiese groei stel 'n tekort aan vaardighede sentraal in die gebrek aan die ekonomiese groei. Die land se plan vir die aankweek van vaardighede werk dus doodgewoon nie. Ten minste gedeeltelik moet dit aan die revolusionêre aard van die SETA-bedeling toegeskryf word. Pleks van om die opleidingsbedeling wat reeds bestaan het te versterk, het die regering in 1998 'n nuwe wet ingestel wat uit die staanspoor getransformeerd moes wees. In die proses is 21 SETA's geskep, wat elke raad, elke bestuur, elke hele struktuur van sy eie moes kry, elkeen 'n hele bureaukrasie op sy eie uitgemaak het, wat elk op sy eie geaudit moet word. 'n Reuse bureaukrasie is geskep waarvoor ironies genoeg die vaardighede nie bestaan het nie. 'n Strategiese plan vir 2020-2024 behoort vir 'n meer vaartbeleide vaardigheidsbedeling te beplan. Een wat meer geld aan vaardighede bestee en minder aan bureaukrasie. Die VF+ kan dus ongelukkig hierdie verslag nie ondersteun nie. Baie dankie.
Dankie, achtbare lid. The next speaker will be the Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The National Freedom Party notes and accepts the report tabled here by the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Technology. Honorable House Chair, we are satisfied that the committee has deliberated on this matter and reported on its findings and its recommendation. I think what is very disturbing is the state of particularly of the SETAs. Now, Honorable House Chair, having perused through this report, we note that SETAs are basking corruption, poor governance issues, a repetitive lack of consequence management. And the question that we need to is how effective is National Schools Authority in collaborating with the Public Protector's Office and the SIU upon conclusions of investigation to ensure that cases are taken forward. Now, mechanisms are in place, but it appears that they do not enforce these things, and as a result of this, not able to execute. It is clear that SETAs have no will in strengthening internal controls to prevent the occurrence of improper conduct by board members and senior management. What we're doing about this, the corruption within SETAs is sickening in that SETAs were supposedly established to close the gap within the higher education sector in equipping students with the necessary skills and readiness for the workplace. In the most recent engagement with the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, the South African Qualifications Authority confirmed in its report that the services SETA appointed executives in key positions who did not possess the minimum requisite qualifications for those positions. Now, Honorable House Chair, the question that arises, is it necessary to have a structure or an entity like CETAs if they cannot fulfill the intended objectives? I think it's something that we need to look at very, very seriously in the future, because if you look at the irregular expenditure, if you look at the amount of looting that is taking place, and the question that we ask is, what is the department, the minister, the deputy minister, the DGs and things doing about correcting these things? Because, you know, Honorable House Chair, you look left is corruption and looting. You look right, it's the same thing. You look front and back, it's the same thing. Surely departments must take greater responsibility, and I want to urge the portfolio committee to do oversight onto these people and ensure that we get this entity to work properly. And if they cannot, then we must discontinue them. The National Freedom Party will support this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Hendricks. The Honorable Hendricks, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, it is very important for the SHETA to reach out to young learners, especially now that we've had the pandemic and their education has been disrupted. I'm aware of the Apply Now campaign of the SHETAs, where they encourage learners to enroll at TVET colleges. The SHETA is one of the institutions that can raise funds from the private sector, in that they charge a skills levy. And I really think that they should be creative, as because of the devastating effects of the pandemic, and also consider providing learners with devices for the fourth industrial revolution and for online learning, and if necessary, negotiate in NETLAC to increase the skills development levies, so that this very important need is satisfied in our schools. Homeschooling, virtual schooling is with us for the next year or two, and we hope that that request will receive some attention. Al-Jamaa supports the report. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next declaration will come from the African National Congress, the Honorable Letsi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. It's important to clarify that we're dealing with a different report, not that one of services seat. I think it's the following report. I heard the opposition, as confused as they are, they made mention of that report, so I thought maybe I must clarify. The PSET sector is an important sector in the advancement of the skills revolution to realize socio-economic transformation. South Africa has a high number of people without post-schooling, and development requires skilling and reskilling of workers and those intending to work. The CETAs provide skills development for various industries, and this contributes to the competitiveness of industries in our economy. CETAs and the National Skills Fund play a critical role in the development of skills for many students in South Africa. They create an opportunity for the youth and older citizens to develop skills that can enable them to find employment. The ANC believes that only a skilled people can make a significant contribution to the growth of the economy that tackles the triple challenges of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. These institutions contribute to the objectives of the Freedom Charter in opening the doors of learning and culture for all. The learning exposure the CETAs offer these students and workers, or they offer these students and offers an opportunity to change their lives and to even feed their families. And this is a reality that some will not tell you. That's why we're disgusted, amongst other things, by the non-payment of stipends by SAWIC, the South African Women in Construction, to learners who are in their projects in Orange Farm for the month of July. With the high rate of unemployment in South Africa, the SETAs become a hope for many young people in enabling them to acquire the qualifications with the completion of training, giving them a better opportunity to find employment and to also create employment as they acquire skills trade. The SETAs support the poor in the main, and that is why they should never fail. Plans by the entities are critical in ensuring the objectives of the white paper on the PSET sector in contributing to the objectives of the NDR or NDP of producing 20,000 artisans per year by 2030. The National Skills Fund is a contractual commitment amounting to 1.5 billion for TVET college infrastructure development. The coronavirus pandemic has shown us the importance of efficient implementation of infrastructure projects as this contributes directly to the learning conditions of our students. Strategic Plan 2020 to 2024 and the annual performance plans of 2020 to 2021 of the ETDP SETA, the MICT SETA, the MER SETA, and the NSF were considered in line with government strategy on and the MTSF framework. The strategic plans and APPs by these various entities, if implemented correctly, will improve the skills base of the country, which enables many citizens the opportunity to participate in the different sectors of the economy. As the NC, we're committed to improving the entire sector such that it improves its systems, like dealing with duplication of function for effective management of bursaries, which all 21 SETAs currently administer, and it requires a centralized system like NRF and NSFAS system, and this will improve efficiency according to us. As the portfolio committee was seized with the responsibility to ensure the SETAs turn around, to ensure that they play their developmental role through creating opportunities for all persons requiring skills. It is for this reason the committee has recommended that we must have deliberations with the Special Investigation Unit and the Public Protector to investigate and make recommendations on internal controls to prevent improper conduct by the board and senior management to improve governance. This should represent a turning point for SETAs. They have gained a bad reputation due to mismanagement and corruption. This should be done with the intention of recovering monies lost in financial irregularities in some of these SETAs. The strategic plan should reposition SETAs as institutions of choice for skills development. Despite weaknesses in some of these SETAs, other SETAs are functioning effectively, demonstrating their capabilities to deliver their mandate. Recurring infrastructure, irregular expenditure, poor control system, and breach of supply chain management processes should be effectively mitigated to ensure our promise to skill the people of South Africa. We actually want to mention the MICT because it was mentioned, I think, twice now, that their new CEO at least is doing a very good job there. Mr. Zako is doing extremely well. I think whilst it might be fashionable to mention those who are not doing well, maybe let's also encourage others by mentioning those who are doing well. The commitment of the ANC to deal decisively with corrupt officials and private sector enterprises will lead to SETAs making the impact envisaged by the PSET sector. Expanded access to skills development will contribute to creating a skills base to ensure the transformation of South African society. As the ANC, as we support this report, I think it's also important to note that, okay, for the first time today, Mr. Boshoff decided not to support. I did not hear, hence I had to ask him. But there's one specific political party that never attends a portfolio committee. They wear very dirty red overalls. They don't attend committees. They don't support, they never support anything.
That is so ugly. Crumbling stood.
The reasons for not supporting, as you can hear, they don't have reasons. It's just to political grassland. The NC support.
Your time is now expired. Thank you very much.
You're boring, Chief, for your age.
Expired as a yes.
Honorable members, order. Honorable members, the motion is that the report be. Honorable members, be adopted. Are there any objections?
Yes, Chair, can you note the objection of the EFF?
EFF
Progressively
objection is noted. Are there any further objections?
House Chairperson, please note the objection of the FF Plus.
It's noted. Are there any further objections? If there are no further objections, the report is agreed to. I will now move to the third order of the day, and I will invite my colleague, the Honorable Ntombela, to continue presiding over this session of the National Assembly. The Secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Technology on 2018-19 annual reports of National Skills Fund and Sector Education and Training Authorities.
Honorable Ntombela, are you on the platform?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I now call upon the Honorable Mukachwa from the visual platform. Honorable Mukachwa. Is Honorable Mukachwa there?
I'm here, Chair.
Okay, you are at the, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the House, honorable members, young people of South Africa, good afternoon. Allow me to pass my condolences to the family of 16-year-old Nathaniel Julius, who was shot dead outside his home in El Dorado Park by the police on the 26th of August, 2020. Noting this tragedy, we call on the Safety and Security Sector Education and Training Authority to prioritize the facilitation of education and training for the military and police that will empower them with the ability to ethically and humanely uphold law and order in a democratic South Africa. The Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Technology considered the reports from the National Skills Fund and various sector education and training authorities on the 3rd December 2019. It is without contestation that financial and non-financial performance is important to assess the capability of the department to implement its mandate. The committee considered the 2018-19 annual reports of the National Skills Fund, the Wholesale and Retail SETA, the Agri-SETA, the Mining Qualifications Authority, the Transport Education and Training Authority, the Construction SETA, and the Services SETA. The white paper for post-school education and training sets out a vision of a single, coherent, and differentiated system. To achieve such a system, we require redress in the SETAs and the National Skills Fund in relation to the management of its business administration. For an example, to ensure that the work of the Auditor General is not impeded by not availing required complete reports for it to fulfill its mandate. A capable developmental state will not be possible with institutions that have inadequate internal controls relating to project monitoring and reporting. The committee resolutes on the fact that in instances of inconsistency and non-compliance, there must be consequence management in order to protect the gains of our democracy. This is important to steer all SETAs to a path of effective public institutions that empower our society through skills development. The state of our SETAs and the National Skills Fund regarding their ability to implement their plans and achieve their targets is of great concern to the Portfolio Committee. However, it is only fair that we equally commend the SETAs with senior management teams that are implementing forensic report recommendations. Honorable members, the people of South Africa need access to skills and knowledge in order to ensure their active participation in the economy. Skills and knowledge remain an apex priority of our government's pro-poor policies and is a central pillar of our fight against the triple challenge of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Thus, we must stress the fact that corruption and maladministration within the skills program directly threatens the achievement of this key objective and poses as a threat to the gains of our democracy. The Portfolio Committee has recommended that the National Skills Fund and other SETAs develop an action plan to respond to all irregularities in the entities and to expedite the finalization of disciplinary cases against employees implicated in forensic investigation reports. And in tracking progress in this regard, entities are expected to report to the Portfolio Committee on the implementation of recommendations made by the Portfolio Committee. With that being said, we are concerned by the regression of the National Skills Fund, which obtained a qualified audit from an unqualified audit the previous financial year, demonstrating deterioration within an entity which plays such a pivotal role in the education and training sector. Honorable members, it is pivotal to track and trace the progress of beneficiaries of the skills program to ensure that they have access to exit opportunities. This can be achieved through a clear, integrated approach within the public sector and a social compact with private sector in terms of matching beneficiaries with opportunities. Honorable members and citizens of South Africa, zizochika izinto. Njengoba ashilo umhlonishwa uLutsiye, asisafuna ukuthi Chief Whip mase sihambe emphakathini thiwa uhlala kuyephi committee eParliament uthi ngihlala ku committee ye higher education, science and technology. Abantu bathi hawu leya ye corruption. Oh leya ma stipend. Sifuna ukuthi abantu mabasibona singamalunga weParliament ahlala ku Portfolio Committee ye higher education, science and technology babe ne hope, babe nethemba ukuthi they will have the required skills and knowledge in order to create a prosperous future for themselves. We want the young and the old to be skilled. We want the people of South Africa to receive locally relevant and world competitive training that will empower them to generate livelihoods across our communities from Thoyando through Engcobo to Langa. We thus place this report before the House for consideration and adoption. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party from the Chamber.
Chair, thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that the House adopts this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Requests for declarations of vote have been received. I will now allow one member of each political party wishing to do so. DA, Honorable Notata.
Sihlalo malunga abhekekileyo, fellow South Africans, molweni. The purpose of this report is to account on the financial and non-financial targets of the National Skills Fund and SETAs on the use of taxpayers' money to tangibly change young people's lives for the better through skills development in the year 2018-2019. In 2018 and 2019, the NSF had 16 targets. The NSF only achieved 63% of these targets, a drop from 73% in the previous year. For the 2018 and 2019, the NSF received a qualified audit opinion with findings by the Auditor General. This was a regression from an unqualified audit opinion with findings awarded in 2017 and 18. The entity incurred irregular expenditure amounting to 4 million for the year under the review due to non-compliance with supply chain management processes. The Auditor General found that there were no investigations instituted on this matter, and this is in contravention with the PFMA. The entity invested 2.2 billion towards skills development interventions for the year 2018-19. However, it does not have a monitoring system to track the absorption of the beneficiaries into the labor market. The related skills development expenses had not been properly accounted for, as evidence that the services had been received could not be provided. The Auditor General was unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence that disciplinary steps were taken against officials who had incurred irregular expenditure, this was because proper and complete records were not maintained as evidence to support the overall performance of the entity for the year under review stood at 62%, and this was not satisfactory given the amount of resources and the mandate of the entity to close the skills. Entities are dismally failing, as we've mentioned in the previous statement. They are failing entities in developing skills needed despite billions of funds pumped into them, which they don't fail to squander, however fail to produce the relevant skills. There is a big question regarding the real value for money versus the skills developed that needs to be reviewed. As an example, the performance of the W&R CETA for the 2018 and 19 financial year stood at 31%, only achieving 25 of 81 targets, while it spent 867 million, which is 76% of its budget. The entity regressed from an unqualified audit opinion to a qualified audit opinion with findings. Moreover, the irregular expenditure amounting to 6.5 million was incurred during the year under review, mainly due to weaknesses of supply management processes. Amongst failures is the inability to address the scarce skills or occupational qualifications that need to be submitted to the QCTO, the registration of 5,500 employed and 800 unemployed learners on skills programs, the registration of 3,000 new beneficiaries in TVET colleges, which should be completing learnerships, apprenticeships that are addressing the backlogs in artisans that we need in this country. The entity was unable to account for the absorption of the skills development beneficiaries as indicated in the above. As another example, the services CETA received a qualified audit opinion with findings with irregular expenditure of 17 million under the year in review and a status of 949 million irregular expenditure for prior years is of great concern, of which the bulk of it was incurred due to costs incurred on contravention of supply management regulations. The culture of lack of consequence management against officials contravening the supply chain management regulations is something that should be done with the utmost vigor because it robs young people of skills and eats up taxpayers' money intended to skill people so as to go look for work, create some form of skill for entrepreneurship, and not to add on the unemployment statistics. The entity is amongst the 4 CETAs that contributed to 1.1 billion worth of irregular expenditure within the higher education and training portfolio due to overspending on the budget. Compounding the situation was that the presentation by the CEO of the entity painted a picture of an organization that is well managed, yet it's in dismal form. Therefore, the DA has put forward recommendations to properly use taxpayers' money, hold those who steal from young people accountable, and to focus on the work of developing the scarce skills to place the youth in employment. 1, the NSF must improve the project monitoring and evaluation systems to account on the performance of funded skills intervention programs. Number 2, the Director General must ensure that action is taken to investigate irregular expenditure and those responsible to be held accountable. Number 3, steps must be taken to ensure that an action plan is developed to implement and address the findings by the AG. And lastly, the Minister should review the entire business model of CETAs and consider more funding to the business entities. The DA notes this report.
Thank you, Honorable Member. From the EFF, Honorable Tambegwayo.
Thank you, Chairperson.
On the visual platform.
Thank you. When the National Skills Fund came to present at the committee last year, most of the members of the committee were not pleased with the performance of the fund and the fact that it had failed about a third of its targets for the 2018-2019 financial year. For the 2018-2019 financial year, the National Skills Fund had a total revenue amounting to 4 billion, and they only spent 2.5 billion of that amount. There was a significant decline in the expenditure on skills development grant because they argued of fee-free higher education. Chairperson, where is fee-free higher education in the country? Thousands of students are still excluded from universities because they cannot afford to pay the monies required. NSFAS just recently indicated that they were going to defund over 5,000 students. The National Skills Fund is not moved by all this. Rather, just like SETAs, they have been turned into a looting machine by the ANC and their main representative in the Department of Higher Education. The reality of the matter is that the National Skills Fund is terribly managed. And this was clearly shown in the report of the Auditor General, who gave the NSF a qualified audit finding because, amongst other things, there was failure to account for monies that were used in a corrupt manner. There was also failure to provide evidence of disciplinary action against officials implicated in the wrongdoing. This is the kind of institution Minister Blade Nzimande presides over, and there is no reason not to believe that the mismanagement of the NSF and at the SETAs is a carefully designed strategy to loot the state to fund the political aspirations of the leader of the Communist Party. We therefore reject this report. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Tembewaya. Honorable Ngobo from the Visual Platform, IFP.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ngobo is having some network problems, so I will take his place.
You're welcome, Chief.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, the National Skills Fund and the Sector Education and Training Authorities are fundamental to the development of employable young people who can join the labor force and contribute to economic development. Both must play visible and effective roles in skills production, as well as in the reduction of the unemployment rate in our struggling economy, particularly amongst the youth. Indeed, as we look to recovery in a post-COVID-19 world, the NSF and SETAs must be centrally situated to allow students who graduated during the pandemic and those who graduated just before to have a fair chance at economic participation. The IFP recognizes the NSF's role in funding critical initiatives such as over 10,000 bursaries and scholarships, some of which benefit rural children. However, we are concerned by the failure to meet all set targets in the period under review. Other colleagues have spoken about the irregular expenditure of 4.6 million by the NSF because of bids that were awarded unlawfully. The NSF incurred even more in irregular expenditure in the previous period. It also received a qualified audit opinion with findings by the Auditor General. This speaks to an absence of diligence when it comes to spending and possibly the absence of sanctions for those responsible. Hopefully, Honorable Chairperson and members, the amendments to the Public Audit Act, which have been passed by Parliament, which deals with consequence management and which deals with the Auditor General having the power to work with other law enforcement authorities, will make these transgressors not put their hands in the cookie jar. Enough is enough. Our poor students are suffering. Honorable Chairperson, the SETAs are mandated to promote skills development for the education and training sector. The wholesale and retail SETA achieved only 31% of its targets, 25 out of 81. That is shameful. And also received an adverse qualified findings by the Auditor General. The IFP believes that South Africa's young people deserve responsible, accountable, and transparent agencies. The continuous underspending and irregular expenditure reek of entrenched corruption. And this, in turn, deprives our young graduates of the opportunity to break the cycle of poverty and inequality in a way that affirms their dignity. We therefore trust that whatever has to be done in terms of investigating these corrupt activities must be done sooner rather than later, and people who are found responsible for criminal activities wear the orange overalls. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Boshoff from the Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. To consider an annual report of 2018-19 in the spring of 2020 feels more like an historical exercise than a governance report, but yet here we are. The National Skill Funds receives 0.2% of the country's total employment account, which in 2018-19 added up to 3.5 billion rand. This is because the 1% skills levy is divided between the sectoral education and training authorities, 80%, and the National Skills Funds, 20%. This is a lot of money, but patently not enough. Fortunately, the NSF also earns interest on everything it can't spend. In the year under review, 3.4 billion rand had been invested in this way, earning around 445 billion rand in interest. It was projected that only an additional amount of 1.5 billion rand would be added to the investment with the Public Investment Corporation, as that is all that had not been spent in the year under review. Every rand invested with the Public Investment Corporation in this way is a rand not invested in skills development. Let no one be surprised by the skills shortage in South Africa. Of the 21 SETAs, only 5 had been reported on in this document. Although this is due to a practical imperative, it is a problem in itself. These are institutions which are still finding their governance feet. Therefore, unqualified audit reports are difficult to find, and it would be really good if all the SETAs could be scrutinized as well as these 5 every year, but that is of course not possible. In 4 of the 5 SETAs under scrutiny, the Portfolio Committee recommended that steps against employees and or board members regarding misconduct, irregular spending, contravention of supply chain management, or other irregularities are taken or concluded. Furthermore, the lack of a clear distinction between roles is noted. The NSF has financed categories of students in that year, which are also funded by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS. No one can be blamed for struggling to distinguish between the NSF and the NSFAS. The reality that this report deals with should not be applauded, but the inquisitive way in which it was investigated and the frank way in which it was reported on by the committee should. Therefore, and maybe I could just get the Honorable Let's attention for a moment. Therefore, the FF Plus does support the adoption of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Boshoff. Honorable Sheikh Imam from the NFP is the next speaker.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, the National Freedom Party supports the report that is tabled here today. The National Skills Fund and SETAs have a critical role to play in closing the gap in the country through the promotion of work-based skills development and the facilitation of access to occupationally directed learning programs for the employed and unemployed. This is made possible through the utilization of the 1% skills levy contributed by employees in the different sectors. Now, Honorable House Chair, the findings of the Auditor General is very concerning, and it further appears that there's been insufficient oversight and scrutiny by internal audit units of these entities, since the errors and misstatements could have been prevented if effective reviews were performed at all levels. 4 SETAs, Honorable House Chair, contributed to over 1.1 billion rand of irregular expenditure. The lack of consequence management against the officials responsible for contributing the supply chain management regulation and the slow pace in the finalization of misconduct hearings must be addressed. The majority of SETAs and the National Skills Fund were unable to achieve all their set targets. Of serious concern to note is that these entities do not even have the funding that is allocated to these projects and its utilization. As a result, some of the skills development providers take advantage of this loophole at the expense of skilling young and unemployed learners. Some of the SETAs were unable to account for the absorption of their beneficiaries into workplaces upon completion of their skills program, owing to absence of tracer studies. Now, Honorable House Chair, this is very difficult to measure the impact on skills development program in closing the skills gap and reducing unemployment in the country. Now, the National Freedom Party therefore calls on the committee to intensify its intervention to combat the levels of corruption in SETAs. The National Freedom Party supports the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Al-Jamaa, Honorable Hendricks, from the visual platform.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, we are covered. Al-Jamaa supports the report.
Progressive. Thank you very much, Honorable Hendricks. Any other party wishing
that's
to
all.
make a declaration before we close? Before the ANC closes? Any other party? Okay, thank you. ANC. Honorable member from the ANC.
Okay, thank you, House Chairperson. Let me firstly thank all the members of the Portfolio Committee, in particular those who are from the governing party. We are being taught that we must not hide the truth from the masses, and it's exactly what you did today. The post-school education training is one of the key skills development drivers in the country. The creation of an employable society requires closing the skills gap between the poor and the privileged. Living in the changing world, we will require effective and responsive institutions of skills development. The success of the SETAs will lead to many South Africans having equal opportunities to participate in the economy. The investment on skills through skills levy is consistent with ensuring that employers and institutions in the country contribute to the skilling of the people. The scale of the impact of SETAs is significant, as it targeted 140,000 work-based learning opportunities for 2019. This will make a significant impact in the lives of many young people who are yearning for a better future and a better life. This is a commitment that the ANC has realized in the struggle to overcome unemployment, poverty, and inequality in South Africa. Honorable Chairperson, the management of finances in the National Skills Fund and SETA has regressed indeed. As many have said from opposition, indeed we do agree and we do reaffirm the fact that everything has been regressed in this particular SETAs. However, one would want to say that corporate governance in some SETAs required a rapid turnaround, as the current failures of SETAs are overshadowing the important mandate that SETAs need to achieve. Procurement processes should always be done within the guidelines of preferential procurement regulations. You would know Section 217, it stipulates clear that everything must be done fairly and people must get these opportunities equally so. The 1% skills levy contributed by employers in different sectors can only contribute to the sectors of the economy through prudent use of the resource, such as those that are skills-based developed. In order to build an ethical and capable developmental state, our institution must have the capability to implement consequence management. As many officials have been implicated in forensic reports, which affects the performance of the institutions, and worker morale is very, very low. The Auditor General findings are of great concern to the committee. The fact that the annual performance report did not agree to the supporting evidence provided is a serious concern for the Portfolio Committee. The wholesale and retail SETA achieved 31% of its predetermined target. We are pleased as a Portfolio Committee that some of the officials are doing their work while others are still dilly-dallying and playing politics. We should condemn any form of misconduct in these institutions. The ANC exists to create a better life for all. This better life will be attained when all the people of South Africa have equal opportunities to participate in the economy. All the sectors are under the Department of the Head, require strong institutions with capability to deliver services. In order to make an impact that empowers youth, people living with disability, LGBTIQA+ society, men and women. We know every time people will just speak about other sectors when it's gender-based violence. However, us from the ruling party, we want to say everybody must get these opportunities, be it LGBTIQA+ society and people with disability. The National Skills Fund has approved 789 million for the 10,223 students with bursaries and scholarships in support of the Rural Student Program. This priority represents the commitment of the ANC in addressing inequality in our society and closing the gap between those in urban areas and rural areas. Construction of a rigging workshop at Falls Bay, TVET College, to be used as an artisan center, play an critical role in developing specialized skills for the industrial of our country. National Congress has resolved decisively to deal with corruption and maladministration. Our public servants should always understand the negative impact of corruption on the poor and underprivileged. The Portfolio Committee will be monitoring action plans in responding to findings by the Auditor General and internal forensic. I cannot be disturbed by you. The implementation of this report is important to ensure all officials in sectors that are involved in malpractices will be taken to task. Honorable members, DA, listen. They now suggest that those instructed to build the human capital of South Africa must do so without favor, fear, or contradictions. And those fit for purpose must rise to the occasion. The ANC support this report because it represents the robust oversight work done by the committee in ensuring that government succeed in achieving its objective of building an ethical and capable development state. I want to tell you, you must release no data, because no data, when he's at the committee, he can't adopt the reports. So give no data mchino ake atuli. Skills revolution is not a
Honorable Mananiso, could you please call Honorable not data, the Honorable?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, let me say it again. Can they please give Honorable Notata Mchini so that he doesn't just deliberate and go to the DA and come back and adopt on the debate?
Thank you very much, Honorable Mananiso. Time's up. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections, honorable members?
House Chairperson, please be so kind as to note the objection of the Democratic Alliance and most especially of Honorable Nodada.
Noted, honorable member.
House Chair, can you note the objection of the EFF?
Noted. Thank you very much. No any other party. Report agreed to. No objections. Thank you very much. We now go to the fourth order. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry, on Departments of Trade, Industry and of Economic Development's second quarter financial and non-financial performance for 2019-20 financial year.
I now call upon the Honorable T.M. Kosi from the visual platform.
Thank you, House Chairperson, honorable members and South Africans. The Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry on the 12th of November 2019 adopted the report of the Portfolio Committee of Trade and Industry on the Department of Trade and Industry, Economic Development, second quarter financial and non-financial performance for 2019-2020 financial year. This report covers performance of the two departments for the period of the 1st of July to the 30th of September 2019. The assessment of the DTI and EDD showed that the departments achieved 78% and 80% respectively. Area that the committee focused on when engaging the DTI and EDD on this performance for the quarter included the following: the agro-processing competitive and downstream steel industry competitive fund, which are administered by the Industrial Development Corporation, which is the entity of the Economic Development Department. How to improve the ease of doing business to facilitate foreign direct investment and the country's attractiveness as business and investment destination. Access to business visas and work permits. Access to business visas and work permits, in particular, Honorable Speaker, Chairperson of House Chairperson, how to improve ease of reference and doing business to facilitate foreign direct investment and countries' attractiveness to business and investment destination. The access to visas and work permits, in particular, ease of doing administrative burden for foreign investors to apply for business visas and permit in South Africa. Continued trade deficit on trade with some of the BRICS countries, namely Brazil, India, and China. That was a concern, particularly because South Africa mainly imports manufactured goods from these countries. The next point is around the Township and Rural Economies Master Plan, in particular, how they will transform such an economy. Continued contraction on economic growth with the respect of recent gross domestic product, figures with slow decline in economic activities, mainly in the agricultural and construction and transport sector. Ensuring particular participation by all provinces on the temporary employer-employee relief schemes. The work done by the inter-agency work group on the illicit trade, notwithstanding this, the committee required the measures were being considered to address illicit trade, which the committee welcomed. The final point, Chair, allow expenditure on incentives in the first 2 quarters of a financial year, with specific concern of possible fiscal dumping towards the end of the financial year. House Chairperson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party from the Chamber.
Whoever was calling you, Comrade Ngozi, must be in order. Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that the House adopts this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Requests for declarations of vote have been received. I will now allow one member of each political party wishing to make a declaration an opportunity to do so. From the GA, the Honorable Cuthbert from the Chamber.
Hey, this guy, ungifonela ngaka.
Honorable Chair,
Thank
could
you
you
very-
please mute? You have done your business for today. Honorable Cuthbert, it's your turn.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. I think that it was Comrade Messina calling Mr. Nkosi to say that he would like him to join him outside at the next St. George's NEC meeting. Honourable House Chairperson, each and every quarter of the financial year, committee report after committee report, we hear the same thing. The committee is concerned by the economic contraction this quarter. It is important to note that this is not something that has suddenly arrived on the scene at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been a key feature of both President Ramaphosa and Minister Patel's tenures, respectively. Public record informs us that since President Ramaphosa assumed office in February 2018, 5 out of the 8 financial quarters of his tenure have resulted in a contraction of GDP in the economy. By far, the worst performance of any post-apartheid president to date. Despite the innumerable amount of social dialogues, lekotlas, talk shops, the ordinary South Africans' living conditions have become worse, not better. For the purpose of this committee report, let's delve into the steel industry, a microcosm of the economic destruction we have seen at a macroeconomic level. Late last year, the west coast town of Saldanha was rocked by the announcement that ArcelorMittal South Africa would be closing down operations, thus leading to the loss of approximately 2,000 jobs. This was as a result of them needing to implement cost-cutting measures across the country at several of their plants in order to maintain viability. Other towns affected included Newcastle and Vereeniging. Thereafter, government intervened and attempted to find a way to save jobs that would involve the recruitment of equity partners and or the sale of the plant to another interested party. While noble in intention, understanding the devastating effect of people losing their livelihoods, one can't help but think, once again, government has misdiagnosed the problem. The truth is that government have been providing corporate welfare to AMSA for years, such as the 22% safeguard and customs duty, ever-increasing market entry barriers, and the failure to enforce agreements relating to the upgrade of their archaic plants. As we've seen with Eskom and other state-owned entities, monopolies do not work. They only succeed in diminishing quality and raising prices. Therefore, we argue that the forthcoming steel and metal fabrication master plan needs to look towards gradually opening up the steel market to new entrants and focus on the downstream sector, which employs at least 100,000 people. This is where real growth can take place in the industry, but it requires access to competitively priced steel and steel that is regularly available, everything that AMSA has failed to do as a virtual monopoly. Moreover, we suggest that the department takes cognizance of the following steps. First, they should commission the Incentives Administration within the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to investigate possible financial and non-financial incentives for new market entrants. This could take the form of cut rates on bulk services such as water, electricity, and freight over a prescribed period of time in order to lower input costs. In respect of non-financial incentives, the department could facilitate training and knowledge-sharing relationships with captains of international industry. Second, it is imperative that AMSA is put on terms. Where there are obligations made to government and they have not been fulfilled, decisive action should be taken by Minister Patel. This implies that if AMSA does not follow through on its committed capital spend of 4.64 billion rand on upgrading its plants in line with international best practice, then it should be penalized through the removal of certain incentives and benefits. Lastly, where job losses occur, the department, in collaboration with the downstream steel sector, need to assess where opportunities exist for AMSA employees to be reintegrated into the employment market. However, this cannot be expected to happen unless more support in terms of minimizing regulatory burden and providing increased incentives to the downstream steel sector is assured. Honourable Member, it seems as if you've painted your eyebrows on today. Could you maybe recommend your therapist at Sorbet?
Honorable Yako from the EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. One of the key impediments to the growth of South Africa's economy is the lack of will from the Minister of DTI and Competition to see a transformed and evolving industrial South Africa. It is a lack of will to become radical in his approach towards economic transformation in this country. The performance of the DTI and Competition hasn't much changed from the many reports we have received over the years. Entities under the DTIC continue to function as if it's business as usual, where the entire world is going into recession and there is a growing instability in the world's economy. With a budget of over 10 billion, your department minister has not only failed to ensure growing job opportunities, but has failed to open up new industries so that we may see growth. Industries such as agriculture, mining, manufacturing continue to decline. Industrial development is at a standstill, and we have been subjected to downgrading of our economy by Moody's. Our regulating entities remain poor in terms of performance, and we are told time and time again that the situation will be fixed with no tangible solutions in sight. Over 2 billion has been allocated to industrial development. However, this has not translated into relief for rural and neglected communities. Our people are still subjected to jumping hoops just to apply for basic funding for their businesses. It is not that South Africans are not willing to work. Opportunities are denied to the youth of this country, which only seeks the gateway in which they can pave the way for their dreams to come true. Over 5 billion is said to be allocated to the administration of industrial development, yet industrial parks are not performing in terms of reaching the poor. The youth, the women, and people with disabilities, who should be main beneficiaries to employment opportunities, are nowhere to be found. It is my view that the Black Industrials Program, just like the emergence of the BE policy, only stands to benefit the select few who have close proximity to certain leaders of the ruling party. We are yet to be given a breakdown of exactly who these Black industrialists are and how they've been chosen, and how many job opportunities have been created by this program. The special economic zones remain full of undelivered promises to millions of our people in communities that are rich in minerals and the ocean economy possibilities. The only thing that this report says is that only a selected few deserve to have access to opportunities, and therefore we do reject this report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. From the IFP, the next speaker is the Honorable Tabekulu.
Thank you, House Chair. We are living in uncertain times, and it is important to view this report and the appropriate remedies to the issue identified in the context of the pandemic and its effects. The DTI and EDD play an essential role in South Africa's economic agenda. All targets are intended to improve not only the economic trajectory of the country, but to also do so in a manner that includes all South Africans, regardless of where they come from. Both departments have been operating in a climate of slow global economic growth. However, these challenges cannot excuse poor implementation on the failure to meet targets so far. It is imperative that these departments respond to economic turmoil swiftly, effectively, to avoid a further social stratification, and consequently to avoid a further social stratification and economic exclusion, among others. The IFP is concerned that to date, the targeted report on Black women and youth with access to employment and entrepreneurship opportunities was not submitted according to schedule. Black women have the least economic support and remain the most excluded demographic economically. Further, the targeted report on support provided to provinces was not submitted timelessly. These are crucial reports containing information that will determine how National Treasury will support provinces and women. The IFP is also concerned by the slow uptake in the period under review of the temporary employer-employee relief scheme, resulting in a slow uptake to benefits available. This raises concern about how many disparate South Africans were unable to seek the benefits or have had their applications rejected due to missing information as a result of poor information campaign. It is also a cause for concern that the closure of ArcelorMittal South Africa in Saldanha plant took place, despite what has been described as enthusiastic support from all spheres. The resultant job losses, particularly in this economy, are devastating. It begs the question then of whether we are supporting employment opportunities wisely. Sectors were already experiencing the impact of the recession by the second quarter of the year under review, and the efforts that the department had embarked upon in mitigating of those effects need to be submitted now.
Thank you very
in
much.
light of the okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agbara Melder, FF plus. Honorable Melder.
Dankie, huisvoorzitter. The former Department of Trade and Industry and for Economic Development had an important role to play in contributing towards South Africa's national imperatives of addressing unemployment and poverty. Gedurende die tweede termyn van die 2019-2020 finansiële jaar het die verlangsaming en groei van die Suid-Afrikaanse ekonomie die twee departemente egter onder druk geplaas. Geen melding word gemaak in die verslag van die reuse rol wat staatskaping en korrupsie in die verlamsaming van die ekonomie gespeel het nie. Die aankondiging deur ArcelorMittal gedurende die tydperk dat hulle Saldanha staal aanleg en afskaal of selfs sluit, beklemtoon die dringende noodsaak om drastiese aanpassings in beleid en ekonomiese groeiplanne te maak. Voorsitter, daar is ongelukkig tot nou geen teken daarvan. Daarom steun die VF+ die komitee verslag nie. Dankie, voorsitter.
Baie dankie. Honorable Tring, ACDP.
Honorable House Chair, the ACDP extends its prayers and condolences to the family of 16-year-old Nathaniel Julius from Eldorado Park, allegedly shot and killed by a police officer. Indeed, as young Julius lies dead, so does the image of our police over this tragic incident. The ACDP notes the important role this department has to play in contributing towards the national imperative of addressing inequality, unemployment, and poverty by creating an environment conducive to economic growth. The reality is, however, that the ruling party has failed to address these imperatives due to failed government policies, which has not prioritized its people and has not created an adequate enabling environment for job creation. This inability to create an enabling environment for creation, job creation, innovation, and growth has far-reaching dire socio-economic implications, the result of which is experienced at community level. In the second quarter report, the Economic and Development Department correctly highlights the negative role illicit trade has played in revenue collection and the measures being taken by the department, by SARS, National Treasury, and companies, and the Companies and Intellectual Properties Commission. The stark reality is that South Africa is still going to face the serious consequences of the hard lockdown, with the mushrooming of illegal trading and the resultant decline in revenue collection and ballooning unemployment. What this means is a smaller purse for services that the government can provide for its people. It also means that austerity measures will increase with the debilitating snowball effect on social services and the possible infringement of constitutional rights of the poor, vulnerable, and indigent. The Department of Trade and Industry has mentioned the inhibiting effect that red tape has played in doing business in South Africa. This not only affects foreign direct investment, but local investment as well. There is an important need to lower barriers of entry for local businesses and for the creation of industrialization hubs that can supply most of the country's needs, even if there is a disruption of international and continental supply chains. Clearly, South Africans are largely consumers, and if we do not transition quickly to becoming producers, we will continue to struggle economically and move our Gini coefficient in the wrong direction. The fact that we import toothpicks, stamps, and rubber tires, taps, valves, and similar appliances is evidence of our reliance on outside economies to meet needs that could be met internally. The ACDP has continuously spoken about the importance of the ease of doing business. Unnecessary red tape must be reduced so as to efficiently process new applications, which would allow the creation of business that are strategically positioned. This will not only stop the high number of imports, but create sustainable jobs and thereby lower poverty and inequality in South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Threng. Honorable Sheikh Imam. From the NFP, the Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Imam.
Let's move, Chair.
Honorable Imam, are you there? Honorable Imam is muted again.
Hey, dlula chairperson, asinaso isikhathi so Imam Sheikh la.
Honorable Imam.
Kalepi is excited.
Kanti uzanani lo Sheikh chairperson
That's the last
dlula
time.
bo.
So I will now go to the ANC because I can't find Honorable Imam.
But Mkalepi is excited.
Yeah, she's
About
getting
what now
excited.
in all?
Imam is trying to climb up.
Honorable Mkalepi, you're wrong, Rendoenzayo. Let's go to Honorable Hermans of the ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. The Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry and Competition on the third quarter financial and non-financial performance in its engagement.
Kwenzakalani chairperson? What is happening here?
I have
Honorable
requested the
Moatse.
Honorable Hermans from the visual platform.
No, Chair,
Where's
it's
Honorable Hermans from the ANC?
I'm here, Chairperson, but the second quarter is being done by Honorable Moatse.
Thank you, Chairperson.
No coordination, no coordination.
Honorable Hermans, have you? Honorable Hermans.
Yeah.
Yes, Chair. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do the second quarter. The African National Congress.
We don't do that. Members, we don't do that. So don't just do that. You indicate. You just have to indicate and make arrangements if you're going to do something like that. You just don't do it off the cuff.
Okay.
Okay, Honorable. Who was the member on the platform?
Moatse.
Honorable Moatse, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. African National Congress support the report of the Portfolio Committee on Trade, Industry and Competition on the second quarter financial and non-financial performance of the Department of Trade and Industry and as well as economic development. We welcome the performance of department during this period under consideration. We, however, raise a number of concerns. This relates to the report of the closure of Asala Metal South Africa in Saldanha. This will obviously lead to job losses and it will impact on our industrialization agenda. We are encouraged by the commitment of the department and other sister departments in the their engagement to rescue the situation as it presented itself in Saldanha. We believe that these interventions will advert further disinvestment by Asala Metals. We welcome the agro-processing competitive and downstream steel industry competitiveness funds, as the chair has alluded. These funds, especially the agro-processing competitive fund, will improve access to funds by more beneficiaries in a more targeted manner and lead to greater job creation in the agricultural sector. The President, in his SONA, highlighted the need to improve our country investment status internationally by ensuring that we create an environment of the easy of doing business to facilitate foreign direct investment and the country as attractiveness as business and investment destination. Honorable Chair, we are encouraged that Investment South Africa has undertaken to develop and implement a comprehensive investment climate reform over the next 3 years to improve our investment competitiveness globally. As alluded by the chair, as part of our drive to attract investment, our focus in the engagement with the DTI was also about access to business visas and work permits. In particular, how to ease administrative burden on foreign investors to apply for business visas and work permits in South Africa. Our agenda of economic transformation through the creation of an inclusive economy requires that we focus on township and rural economic growth. In this context, we appreciate the development of the township and rural economics master plan, in particular, and believe that the master plan will accelerate the growth of the township and rural economy. Chairperson, the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdown will inevitably contribute to the low economic growth, both domestic and global. Statistics South Africa has released gross-domestic product figures, which shows a decline in economic activity, mainly in agricultural, construction, and transport sector. Over the years, we have raised concern regarding the illicit trade. We are encouraged by the work done by the interagency work group on illicit trade. However, we are concerned about the low expenditure on incentives in the first 2 quarters of the financial year. The department has shared with us the reason for the low expenditure while we understood and appreciate the reason provided. However, urge the department to find creative ways of stimulating economic growth. Chairperson, once again, the ANC supported the 2nd quarter report of the DTI and the EDD. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Chairperson.
Honorable Vessels. Honorable Vessels, are you objecting? Any other party?
Chairperson, please note the objection of the FF Plus.
Thank you very much. Noted. Any other party?
Chair, please note the objection of the EFF.
Yep. Any other party? No further objections. Report agreed to. Shall we go to the 5th order? The Secretary will read the 5th order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry on Departments of Trade and Industry and Economic Development's 3rd quarter financial and non-financial performance for 2019-20 financial year.
Thank you very much. I now call upon the Honorable DM Kosti from the visual platform.
Siyabonga, House Chairperson. Sifunda zonke insuku. Bathi ngishaye nge-flight mode ngeke kube nomuntu ozongithola uma efuna ukungifonela. Siyabonga baba. On the 12th of May 2020, the Portfolio Committee Trade Industry adopted its report of the Portfolio Committee Trade Industry and Economic Development Third Quarter Financial and Non-Financial Performance for 2019-2020 financial year. The report is an outcome of the committee engagement with departments of trade and industry and economic development department. In line with the committee oversight role over these departments, in its assessment, the DTI and EDD, the committee found that the departments have achieved 73% and 80% of their targets, respectively, in the third quarter of 2019-2020 financial year. Furthermore, the committee engaged the DTI and EDD on measures to grow the economy and create inclusive growth through, first point, job creation or measures to reduce the high unemployment rate. The next point, beneficiation of raw materials to add the challenge of exporting of materials, importing of finished products at high prices. Support for Black industrialists for the purpose of inclusive growth in previously untransformed sectors, such as automotive sector. Challenges in the sugar industry, including job losses and closing of the sugar mills. Further is the development and implementation of the master plan, rural and township development to ensure that the participation of Black people in the economy, the development of manufacturing sector to promote growth, increase export competitiveness, and create job opportunities. And the final point, Chair, is the trade agreements, in particular, progress with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I now recognize the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party from the Chamber.
Sihlalo ndiphakamisa into yoba le ndlu mayamkele le ngxelo ithiwe thaca apha ngusihlalo wekomiti.
Siyabonga, Chief Whip. Requests for declarations of vote have been received. I will now allow the member of each political party wishing to make a declaration an opportunity to do so. I have been informed that from the DA, Mr. Macpherson, the Honorable Macpherson will replace the Honorable Cuthbert from the Chamber. DA?
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, this quarterly report deals with many issues, but the one that I really want to focus in is the Black Industrialist Program. This program was introduced by former President Jacob Zuma, which should immediately raise the alarm bells as to the true intention of such a program, and has so far distributed 32 billion rand to around 900 people. For this, we are told that around 50,000 people have either kept their jobs or gained a job. What the minister can't tell you is which one it is. And this is because these 900 people have been given a variety of soft loans, way cheaper than you'd be able to get from any institutional bank, to buy into businesses, not to create new ones. This program is based on the ideological position of the ANC, which first emerged as Black Economic Empowerment, or BEE, and then morphed into broad-based Black Economic Empowerment, or BBBEE. We were told that this was done to deal with redress, provide deeper growth, and close inequality. In reality, all three of these metrics have worsened under BEE and have made Black people poorer under BEE. Inequality between Black and white South Africans has increased year on year and for the last 10 years. There are 30 million South Africans that earn less than 991 Rand per month, which is below the poverty line. For 26 years, the ANC have refused to address this terrible and shocking growing problem, rather choosing to focus on trickle-down empowerment, believing that a few rich comrades and cadres will throw a couple of crumbs at the 30 million poor Black South Africans. BEE was designed and continues to be refined as a patronage scheme by the ANC to enrich friends and comrades at the expense of these 30 million South Africans. Every single major corruption scandal in South Africa is founded on using BEE as a segue to direct contracts and tenders to the politically connected elite under the guise of Black empowerment. Take, for example, the scandal that the DA exposed of how the Gupta family used fraudulent BEE certificates to secure billions of rands in tenders from Eskom under the ideal of advancing Black economic empowerment. Or any instance of state capture, from the awarding of asbestos roof replacements in the Free State by your former Premier, Ace Makashula, to the Vrede Dairy family farm project, which again was under him. All dressed up in BEE and all for the benefit of the politically elected elite. Let's look at the PPE feeding frenzy, which has engulfed the ANC and has found its way to the highest office of the land. We shouldn't be surprised because Ace Makashula has told us that every ANC leader has done business with the state, and all using the corrupt BEE system. But let's not forget that corporate South Africa is also in on the act. Just 2 weeks ago, Patrice Motsepe, the president's brother-in-law, through his 35 billion Rand investment company, African Rainbow Capital, was sold a 25% stake in Sanlam Investment Holdings so that they could qualify for BEE status. As the Sanlam CEO said, that it was good for the deal because it would definitely increase their competitiveness in the institutional market, and there would be more doors opened than would have been previously to attract more money. And he's completely right, because the ANC have mandated that institutional investors must invest their money in companies that have a BEE stake. When this was raised in today's committee meeting, the minister simply batted away, saying we should email Sanlam and ask them the question. He has no concern about anything like this. And you can see the perverse situation whereby the ANC sets the rules in place so that the rich continuously benefit at the expense of the 30 million poor Black South Africans. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macpherson. The Honorable Yako, EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Job opportunities for the youth, women, and people with disabilities remain unattainable in this country. The sugar industry continues to be untransformed. The furniture industry lacks growth. The ocean economy and the blue economy remains open and is yet untapped. Until DTI radically changes and diversifies its structure and approach to economic transformation, we will not see a government with the capacity to sustain itself. During the scourge of the pandemic of COVID-19, the EFF repeatedly called for a state-owned company that would manufacture PPE for this country. However, our advice was ignored over and over again, and now we have PPE corruption scandals. The EFF has repeatedly made recommendations that will see the industrial growth for South Africa and its people. Those have also been ignored. Until such time that we bring special economic zones and industrial parks closer to the township and rural communities of this country, we will forever be burdened by the lack of jobs and job opportunities. Our people must never be infantilized, and South Africa must cease to make itself an any state that only gives grant funding to people. People do want jobs and job opportunities, and they want to access those opportunities, and DTI must also take the youth of this country seriously by providing a conducive environment for them to thrive. South Africa has more than 22.6 million people who can work. 6.2 million of those people are unemployed as we speak. We must advocate for state-owned companies. The South African state must adopt economic policies that protect South African infant industries from outside competition, allow them to sell and produce industrial produce to consumers that are willing to buy at competitive prices rather than imported goods. Therefore, the state needs to play an active role in the economy, subsidize infant industries, place tariffs on imported industrial goods and products, and ban importation of certain goods and products. The DTI really needs to take this the people of this country very seriously. And I feel that the minister, each and every time we bring solutions as a committee, he's not taking us seriously. Each and every time we are told of master plans that are not being implemented. As we speak, we're going to find another entity which is going to provide help to industrial parks, which also begs to ask the question, then what are the industrial parks about? So it feels as if we may be endorsing and communicating with the Minister Patel, but he's not really taking us as a committee seriously. And therefore, we reject this report also.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Sonishwa Tarakolo from the IFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. The year under review saw slow economic growth, particularly in the essential sectors of mining, agriculture, and manufacturing. The contraction was exacerbated by the introduction of COVID-19, which led to a further deepening of the surge in 2020. Experts have predicted that South Africa will see a 7.2% economic contraction this year, the highest in 90 years. Further, according to Stats SA, the country recorded a decline in gross domestic product in the first quarter of 2020, which was minus 2%. It is clear that in order to counteract this contraction, we need initiatives from these two departments that will encourage growth. Despite the difficult economic climate, both the DTI and EDD achieved most of their set target. The DTI facilitated transformation to promote industrial development, investment, competitiveness, and job creation. It also actively sought to establish and foster mutually beneficial regional and global relations in line with South Africa's trade, industrial policy, and economic development objectives. However, the IFP notes with concern that the number of jobs created and retained via the DTI's project were below target. Further, the DTI did not transform well financially. Its budget was 10.8 billion rand for the 2019-2020 financial year. The IFP note that the short-term framework for negotiated pricing agreements was published in June 2018 by the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy for a period of two years, and that the task team has reconvened to develop a long-term framework to assist the industry to remaining sustainable. More details of this framework sooner rather than later would be welcomed. The IFP acknowledges and applauds the work of the economic development in promoting productive investment and inclusive growth, among others. However, the failure of the department to submit essential reports detailing KPIs is worrying. Further, in the period under review, the unemployment rate rose, a trend which has been exacerbated by the pandemic. The above, together with the contracting economic, require concerted collaborative efforts by the department to alleviate poverty and unemployment, which have been aggravated by COVID-19. This is particularly true in the agricultural, mining, and manufacturing sectors. The IFP encourages the engagement of the relevant department to ensure effective coordination of government policy, as well as frequent update on their progress. IFP supports.
Honorable F.J. Mulder, FF Plus.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. During the third quarter of the 2019-20 financial year, the labor force in South Africa had increased by 487,000 people, and the number of jobs had decreased by 108,000, resulting in an unemployment rate increase from 27.1% to 29.1% at the time. Chair, the sectors that were able to increase employment, namely the agricultural, mining, and manufacturing sectors, have come under severe strain during this quarter. The Department of Trade and Industry should mitigate these factors that inhibit the growth of labor-intensive sectors that fall within the mandate, with doing away with unsustainable ideology-driven policies. The Freedom Front Plus did not support this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Thring from the ACDP.
Honorable House Chairperson, the ACDP is cognizant that the DTI's budget for the 2019-20 financial year was some 10.08 billion, with 6.18 billion spent by the end of the third quarter, equating to some 42.6 million less than what was budgeted. The ACDP further notes that in the third quarter of 2019-20, 11 of 15, or 73.3% of the targets had been met. Targets not achieved included the Industrial Policy Action Plan implementation reports, which had not been produced due to a change in policy direction. The number of jobs created and retained from approved projects had been less than targeted. And thirdly, the number of businesses supported through incentives had only been 135 against a target of 300. Clearly, Honorable House Chair, the inability to meet these targets has now been exacerbated by COVID-19, which has left many economies of the world decimated, including the South African economy. While many of our African counterparts did not opt for a hard lockdown, the ruling party in South Africa did. And South Africans are now paying the price for this poor, miscalculated decision. On the political front, we have the triple whammy of corruption, political and policy uncertainty that continue to deliver blow after blow to an already pulverized economy. Our debt to GDP of some 4 trillion is expected to exceed 80% by year end, with Moody's predicting that our debt burden will reach 91% of GDP by fiscal year 2023. Our economy is expected to contract by some 7% in 2020, the largest contraction in nearly 90 years, with second quarter GDP expected to tank by as much as 53%. Unemployment has increased substantially, with 3 million people having lost their jobs during the lockdown period, reducing the number of people employed from 17 million in February to 14 million in April 2020. Corruption, on the other hand, has also continued unabated, as evidenced in the Zondo Commission on State Capture and to the recent fraud and corruption scandals on personal protective equipment. A 500 billion COVID relief fund was set aside to provide a stimulus to the economy and relief to the poor, vulnerable, and unemployed amongst us. Much of this was borrowed, and already billions have been pilfered through corruption, irregular and fraudulent tenders, and we are yet to see any meaningful arrests. As we consider the ACDP's concerns raised in this report, from a lack of beneficiation and local manufacturing to insufficient resource value chains in South Africa, we must state emphatically, the number one accused in the dock must face the full might of the law. As God judges, so too will his people at the next election. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Thring. The next speaker is the Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Imam. Honorable Imam is not on the platform. I will pass. The last speaker on this section is Honorable Anmu Dawu from the ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC rises in support of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry and Competition on the third quarter financial and non-financial performance. In its engagement with the Department of Trade and Industry as well as the Department of Economic Development, the committee is encouraged by the efforts of the department towards addressing issues of unemployment and inclusive growth for the benefits of all South Africans. The key highlights in the performance includes committed investment of 133.3 billion rand, the launch of the Tshwane Auto Special Economic Zone, the gazetting of the Dube Trade Port for designation. The committee welcomed the performance of Department of Trade and Industry and Economic Development on specific areas of the economy to create jobs and retain jobs. The committee in particular welcomed the following: the launch of 2 master plans of the poultry sector and the retail, clothing, textile, leather and footwear sector. The launch of this master plan is critical for the implementation of intervention to grow these sectors. Given the importance of the master plans, the committee encouraged the Department of Trade and Industry to fast-track the master plans of sugar industry, as well as the steel and metal fabrication sectors to address the decline in those sectors and the possible loss of jobs. In terms of the sugar master plan, the farmers in the province of KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga, the sugar millers and other players in the sugar industry value chain need interventions to revive the sector. The sugar master plan are specifically important to help to create conducive conditions for the sugar industry to grow as well as to assist companies to improve their industrial capacities and competitiveness to increase exports. The changes made to downstream steel industry competitive fund to address blockages in accessing the fund and addressing the high cost of steel products for these participating companies. The efforts to deepen rural and township development will contribute towards the transformation of the economy. However, the committee noted its concern regarding the unintended consequence on establishing malls within rural and township communities on local, small, medium, and micro enterprises. It remains important that we support local businesses in our communities. There is a high return on incentives. The Department of Trade and Industry reported that the committee that there is 3.61 return on every R1 invested through incentives. The progress made with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, from which South African manufacturing sector will benefit. As a result, the committee requested the Department of Trade and Industry improve support for local manufacturing, support the development of value chain in all sectors of the economy. Notwithstanding those measures achievements of 2 departments, the committee noted that the Department of Trade and Industry and Economic Development should continue to work and address the following: The unemployment rate will increase from 27.1% to 29.1% in 2019, and the economic decline by supporting economic initiatives that are more labor intensive to create more job opportunities. Challenges facing the steel and mining industry has contributed to uncertainty within the economy. The trade deficit that South Africa has in a trade with some of the BRICS countries, including with China, India, and Russia, from which South Africa mainly imports manufactured goods. Ensuring a smooth transaction from two departments, Department of Trade and Industry and Economic Development Department, to one department, the Department of Trade, Industry, and Competition. Therefore, the committee recommended to the department that the Minister of Trade and Industry should consider the following: incentive for industrial parks, fast-tracking the measures to address the illicit trade in scrap metals, such as the introduction of an export tax, ensuring effective coordination of government policy critical for the implementation of the industrial strategy, particularly on securing the supply of water and electricity to the industries. Finalizing the social economy policy framework in order to facilitate effective coordination across all spheres of government to support the economic development on township and rural areas. Measures to mitigate the negative impact measures to mitigate the negative impact of mall developments on local small businesses in rural and township areas. The ANC support the report. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Chairperson?
Yeah.
Honorable Vessels?
Please note the objection of the FF Plus.
Noted.
Chair, please also note the objection of the EFF.
Noted. No further objection. Report agreed to. Shall we go to the sixth order? The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry on Departments of Trade and Industry and of Economic Development's fourth quarter financial and non-financial performance for 2019-20 financial year.
Thank you very much. I now call upon the Honorable T.M. Kosi from the visual platform.
Thank you, House Chairperson. On the 24th of June 2020, the Portfolio Committee Trade and Industry adopted its report of the Portfolio Committee Trade Industry Department of Trade Economic Development fourth quarter financial and non-financial performance for the 2019-2020 financial year. The committee assessment revealed that the DTI achieved 64% and the Economic Development Department achieved 90% of its targets for the fourth quarter. In the engagement of the departments, the committee focused on the following areas: decline in foreign direct investment, trade deficit on the 26 billion rands with the BRICS countries, with Brazil, Russia, India, and China. The impact of COVID-19 on small businesses, given the significant contribution of small and medium and micro enterprises to the broader economy. The facilitation of the broad-based economic participation, in particular, the department's support of the Youth Employment Program, YES, program as one of the initiatives through which more inclusive growth will be achieved. The other point is the status of reimagined industrial strategy, which is implemented through a number of master plans. The final point is actually the amalgamation of the DTI and EDD, the Department of Trade and Industry and Economic Development Department. Furthermore, the committee welcomed the implementation of the new price discrimination and buyer provision of the Competition Act regulation, as they provide the necessary tool to transform South African economy, aiming at the protecting of small and medium enterprises and firms owned by the historically disadvantaged individual. These were all important issues for the committee to oversee as they related to the mandate of the two departments and the South African economy. House Chairperson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party from the chamber.
On that flight mode. On a flight mode. Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move to request this House to adopt this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Requests for the declarations of vote have been received. I will now allow one member of each political party wishing to make a declaration an opportunity to do so. From the DA, the Honorable Macpherson. Honorable Macpherson.
Honorable House Chairperson, by Q4 of the 2019-2020 financial year, it became clear to members on the Portfolio Committee that the mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic by the governing party would lead to tremendous economic fallout. Whomever thought the Soviet-style regulations issued under the Disaster Management Act would prove to be a silver bullet in the fight against poverty and unemployment was deeply misguided. Rather, these ill-conceived regulations have only been successful in making South Africans poorer and more desperate for economic reform. It now seems that South Africa is destined for the latter end of National Treasury's modeling, which revealed that our economy would lose anywhere between 3 to 7 million jobs. This effect is particularly stark in the scrap metal industry, who have had the most draconian regulations imposed upon them during this lockdown, as if the price preference system, the PPS, wasn't bad enough. A system which involves the issuing of permits to scrap metal dealers so they can auction their scrap to local mills and foundries, and which only allows for export under extremely limited circumstances. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, in collaboration with the National Treasury, has decided to go one further and introduce an export tax on scrap metals. There's no doubt that this is a terrible idea and one that should be relegated to file 13. However, when the DA raised the fact that the introduction of this tax could lead to massive job losses and at worst, the decimation of an entire industry, Minister Patel rebuffed it. Furthermore, we suggested that this contentious tax be put out for further public participation and consultation with stakeholders. Once again, Minister Patel rebuffed it. He told us that this misguided policy choice was a promise in his party's manifesto, and if we wanted to extend consultation, we should have won the election. Now, how's that? He didn't stop there. He went on to say that he welcomes any court challenge that the industry may bring, and he gloated at how he would continue to beat them in the courts. Surely this isn't how a minister engages with industry. Rather than sticking to his own ideological rigidities, which dictate that one should tax everything that walks, he would do well to act in a pragmatic fashion when he deals with this matter. There's no doubt that the sale of electrical cables and other stolen metals to scrap dealers poses a challenge. But the addition of more red tape rather, is not the answer. Why not improve coordination with the South African Police Service and ensure that the tracking and tracing of individuals guilty of such crimes are brought to book? rather than penalizing small business owners and workers who rely on scrap metal industry to feed their families and clothe their children. Ministers and members of the Portfolio Committee, we call on you to reconsider your position and reject this export tax as the job-killing measure that it is. We cannot artificially create a market for this steel when there is no local demand. Surely experience has taught us this. Unless the minister and his comrades have left Stalin Station in the USSR and well on their way to Juche Station in North Korea. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Excuse me. Honorable Yako from the EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I think we will be reiterating the same issues we've been talking about since the second budget report. We feel that the minister really needs to take the youth of this country seriously. They want jobs and they want them now. We feel the minister needs to take the advice of the EFF, which is the most progressive party in South Africa at the moment, and institute state-owned companies that will make sure that our people benefit from what is originally made in South Africa. We feel that for the minister to really take our people seriously, he needs to bring special economic zones closer to the people, industrial parks that will genuinely look at the rural economics in the town and the township economics of this country. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Yako. Honorable Tarekolo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Trade, industry, and economic development are the pillars which support our economy. Considering the central role of the economy for the continued well-being of South Africa and all her people, it is of concern that so many issues cropped up in this particular report. Among others, the widespread failure to meet program targets, such as for the Special Economic Zone and Economic Transformation Program. The target was for 25 black industrialists in invention. A mere 10 were achieved in the fourth quarter. This is less than half. The report further makes continued mention of the impact of COVID-19. However, although the report is dated 24th June 2020, the period under review ended on March 31st, 2020. To place this in context, on the 31st of March 2020, there were 625,056 confirmed COVID-19 cases in South Africa and 25.2 million cases globally. South Africa was a day 159 of the national lockdown. In light of this, I'm sure you will agree that by 31st of March, South Africa had yet to reap the pandemic devastating harvest. The fourth quarter financial performance or lack thereof for the 2019-2020 financial year cannot be laid at the doorstep of COVID-19. As the IFP, we are concerned about the accuracy of the information provided in the report. The report states South Africa would no longer be in compliance with conditions of the AGOA, of the Copyright Amendment Bill would be signed into law. Currently, the bill was with the President. However, this claim is inaccurate. President Ramaphosa referred the Copyright Amendment Bill back to Parliament on the 16th of June 2020, more than a week prior to this report being published. We trust that a matter of such importance will receive the proper attention from the committee going forward. I thank you.
Siyabonga Baba. Sele. The Honorable Mulder from the FF Plus.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. In the near future, a story will be told that affirmative action will be necessary to address poverty and the redress of the injustices that all South Africans, black and white, incurred under 3 decades of ANC rule, and this time without the exclusion of anyone. The former Minister of Finance, Mr. Trevor Manuel, recently said that 30 years were lost. To award contracts of billions of rands to people who cannot deliver because they have political connections and is not empowerment, but nothing else than economic sabotage and theft. Time has told us that intended inclusive economic growth, transformation and job creation under an ANC government resulted in poor governance, corruption, state capture, failed BBBE and quotas. Chair, quotas is in concept an extraordinary privilege that comes at a premium that the weakened South African economy cannot afford anymore. If we measure the department's performance in the fourth quarter of the 2019-20 financial year according to the following strategic objectives, namely the facilitation of transformation of the economy to promote industrial development, investment, competitiveness, and employment creation, the building of mutually beneficial regional and global relations to advance South Africa's trade, the facilitation of broad-based economic participation, the creation of a fair regulatory environment that enables investment, and the promotion of a professional, ethical, dynamic, competitive, and customer-focused working environment. The department has already failed to achieve these strategic objectives prior to COVID-19 and will now, with an even further decreased budget and weak economy, have to take a drastic step away from its socialist policies towards the creation of a competitive and sustainable market-related economy. Time will tell us which route was taken, and the story will be told someday in the near future. The Freedom Front Plus cannot support this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. We now move to the Honorable Thring, ACDP.
Honorable House Chairperson, as the ACDP considers this fourth quarter report of the DTIC for 2019-20 financial year, there can be no doubt of the incredibly important role this department has to play in attempting to resuscitate the ailing South African economy. The strategic goals of the department include facilitating transformation of the economy to promote industrial development, building mutually beneficial regional and global relations, facilitating broad-based economic participation, creating a fair regulatory environment which enables investment, trade, and enterprise development, promoting a professional, ethical, dynamic, competitive, and customer-focused working environment that ensures effective and efficient service delivery, all of which are crucial to creating an inclusive, thriving economy. Honorable House Chairperson, the ACDP notes and appreciates the creation of some 3,660 jobs through the Youth Empowerment Service, and in the Incentive Development Administration Program, the one target of 4 achieved was the retaining of 9,911 jobs against a target of 3,000 jobs. While every job saved and every job created must be commended, the stark reality is that these are minuscule when compared to the already 3 million jobs lost and possibly many more to follow. Honorable House Chairperson, the ACDP has raised its concern about the decline not only in foreign direct investment, but local investment as well. This is evident by the decline in gross fixed capital formation in the fourth quarter. This decline was evident in both the public and private sectors. Simply put, a decline in investment will result in a decline in jobs, and government should be employing a counter-cyclical policy. The ACDP has also bemoaned the continued trade deficit that we hold with our BRICS partners, particularly China, over the last 5 years. This deficit in Economics 101 means that we continue to support the creation of more jobs in countries of our BRICS partners than we do at home. Without a doubt, there is no party that has spoken out more on expanding beneficiation in our committee meetings other than the ACDP. With our economy on its knees and catered deployment through the National Democratic Revolution continuing to drain the last droplets of economic blood from the system, it must be noted that in addition to promoting a professional, ethical, dynamic, and competitive and customer-focused working environment, the ACDP offers a lifeline through our economic policy, which encourages the creation of an enabling environment through infrastructure development, a professional and streamlined public service, good education, and vocational training which is relevant to global trends and technological advances. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Three. The next person is the Honorable Sheikh Imam. I'm sure he must be back by now. Honorable Imam is not here. Any other person before I call the ANC to close? And I'll call upon the ANC from the visual platform.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, House Chair. The African
Welcome, Honorable Hamad. Now is the time.
Yes, thank you, House Chair. The African National Congress rise to declare its support for the fourth quarter financial and non-financial performance of the Departments of Trade and Industry, DTI, as well as the Department of Economic Development, EDD. We correctly make an observation in the report that the fourth quarter reports were presented under difficult economic environment, both domestically and internationally. On the domestic front, our economy was under technical recession. The rating agencies have also downgraded our technical ratings, and that the world was on the verge of a pandemic of global proportion. This outbreak negatively impacted on all sectors of the economy, which compromised some of the deliverables for the DTI and the EDD, and contributed to the slowdown in the deepening of industrialization in South Africa. The socio-economic impact of COVID-19 should not be underestimated, as it could further challenge government's efforts to address the triple challenge of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. It is also worth noting that the two departments, DTI and EDD, at the time of reporting were in the middle of a merger process of the two departments, necessitated by the President's directive to reconfigure the state. It is the reconfiguration of the state that led to the amalgamation of the two departments. As with all transitions, the process of the amalgamation would have inevitably affected the programs of the two former departments. Of importance is that the amalgamation has expanded the mandate of the new department, Trade, Industry, and Competition. We firstly would like to commend the good work, to commend the good work done by the departments to refocus our industrial strategy through the reimagined industrial strategy, which will be implemented through master plans. Consistent with our agenda as the ANC, the agenda of growing and transforming our economy through the creation of an inclusive economy, the department has exceeded its target of the employment of people with disabilities, achieving a whopping 3.9%, which we hope to grow. Coincidentally, we are just concluding Women's Month, and as we conclude with the recognition of the department towards women empowerment initiatives, the department has exceeded its target of 50% of women employed in senior management, achieving 54%. The department has also facilitated the creation of over 3,000 jobs, through Youth Employment Services, the YES initiative. As we said earlier, the circumstances in which the fourth quarter reports were presented as a difficult period economically for our country and the globe at large. This is evident in the low investments, the investments being lower than anticipated. The department has leveraged 1.7 billion in investments approved for incentives against a target of 4.5 billion. Indications are that the next few months will be challenging for our economy, given that we are still under lockdown and that global economic activities are not at desired levels. All indications are that we are heading for a global economic contraction of 5% or more. This requires that the department should work smarter and more with less to stimulate economic growth. We urge the department to build social compacts through the master plans to reignite our economic growth. And the ANC support the fourth quarter financial and now non-financial performance of the Departments of Trade, Industry and Competition. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Are there any objections to the motion that the report be adopted? No objection.
Chairperson,
Honorable Vessels.
please note the objection of the FF Plus.
Noted. Any other objection?
Note the objection of the AFF.
Noted. Any other objection? No further objections. Report agreed to. Honorable members, that concludes the business for the day and the House is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Ndawuzitha.
you. Thank you, Chief Whip.
Manda. Long live the chair.
Thank you, Ndawuzitha. Thank you, Chief Whip.